Welcome back to the Injury Prone Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Edwin Porras, physical therapy medical analyst at fantasypoints.com. I messed that one up. Medical analyst at fantasypoints.com. Gracias por tus oídos. We're back. It is pre-week 4. We're talking injuries again. Going to give you some updates on Cooper Kupp, Christian McCaffrey, all of the above, all of the primary ones. If you want the main, the full breakdown of everything, head over to fantasypoints.com. Go to the injury tab, and you can read that article for free. It has everybody. But today, again, I want to start with letting you know we are still pumping out our playbook. You're going to get the draft guide. You're going to get the injury prone draft guide, which obviously at this point doesn't mean a lot, but you can look at our track record. We're not hiding it. And you can look at the playbook, right? The playbook is huge. If you want to know what Cooper Kupp will look like when he gets back, you can go to high ankles for wide receivers and look there. If you want to know how Jonathon Brooks will look after his ACL, hint, hint, we're going to talk about him a little bit today. You can go to the ACL section and read that. If you want to know how quarterbacks come back after an ankle sprain, Justin Herbert, we're about to talk about that. You can read the full breakdown. So go to the show notes, go to Injury Prone Draft Guide and Playbook, click on it. It is $20. I promise you will not regret it. If you do, email me personally and we'll refund you. No problem. But I know you won't regret it. So let's get started here. We'll start with, of course, the guy that I'm still getting a ton of questions about, Cooper Kupp. I want to try to go through this sort of bullet by bullet and let you know what I think and sort of where I stand. So with Cooper Kupp, he was not placed on IR. And I know that there's a lot of analysis out there and a lot of discussion about the fact that the Rams are basically at full capacity with their IR slots, which is true, but there are other teams that are also in the same, or similar situation. So, they are not placing Cooper Kupp on IR. He is not on IR. Here's what we know. Number one, we know, we can't confirm, but we're relatively certain there's no fracture in his ankle. We know that because there was a picture that circulated. I posted it on Twitter at FBInjuryDoc. Of him wearing the game ready device, which is a compression and ice machine. If there was a fracture there, they would not leave him in that boot. They would not let him use that machine. They would immobilize the bone and they would let it heal on its own. Unless of course it's a very minor fracture, which is always possible, but we know that it's not a massive injury. So they're not going to place him on IR. And we know that at this point, Sean McVay said he won't be back, for week 4, which is understandable. What we look at when it comes to wide receivers, and again, going back to that playbook, if you have that playbook available to you, we know that the average amount of time that wide receivers miss with a high ankle sprain that is not surgical is about 2.5 weeks. If you look at the performance when they come back, it doesn't look great, but after the second week that they get back, they are pretty much back to normal. So any rhetoric out there that says Cooper Kupp won't get back to 100% or whatever the case may be, that's not based on any reality. If he comes back, he doesn't have a fracture, he doesn't have surgery, he's likely going to be very similar to what you'd expect from what we saw in week 1, Cooper Kupp. So the last thing about the data here is the median amount of time missed for high ankle sprains in wide receivers is 2, right? And 44% miss 0 to 1 games. And we look at the rest of the data here, and we see that 60% miss 2 games. Only 24% of wide receivers miss 3 to 4 games, and only 16% miss 5+ games. In other words, we have a decent shot of Cooper Kupp coming back after the bye. But he could be back as soon as week 5, depending on how he's feeling. So we'll have to monitor that one. But I still think Cooper Kupp is a target. He's still, at high risk because of workloads being up and down. But again, he's a power law player. I would not hesitate to target Cooper Kupp as long as you have room and as long as it makes sense. Maybe you're sitting at 3-0. I would target Cooper Kupp. Another guy that I'm targeting, despite his escapades to Germany, is Christian McCaffrey, right? CMC. Long story short, Christian McCaffrey was spotted on a flight to Munich. Likely what he was doing is going to get some biologic treatment, right? In other words, stem cells, PRP, stuff that isn't federally approved here in the United States, but is in Germany. The truth is that's really, it doesn't really change his prognosis, realistically. the biologics and that treatment, a lot of the times it has pretty ardent supporters like physicians that will claim that it's, the next best thing since sliced bread. Realistically, if you look at the data doesn't really favor it moving the needle much at all for Achilles tendinopathy specifically. And it doesn't necessarily increase his risk either, right? But right now he's got the time, he's got the money and the resources, he's got the means. He's going to Germany. He's going to try it out, right? He's always at risk to have a re-injury, a re-aggravation. But again, another power law player, Christian McCaffrey, especially, I don't know how unless you, sort of hit the jackpot. If you are sitting 2-1 or 3-0, and Christian McCaffrey's out there and the owner's panicking, I would still target him. I think Christian McCaffrey is back somewhere in the neighborhood between weeks 7 and 8. I don't necessarily think they'll be back. They'll wait until after the bye if he's ready, but they could, because at that point, I mean, you have to remember he's been out since August. So I am fairly confident this could be a week 7 to 8 return. But I think at the latest after their bye in week 10 is when we can expect Christian McCaffrey. If you can hold on until then, like I said, I'm targeting Christian McCaffrey. And I'm living with the results. Is it risky? Yes, it's risky. But I'm going to live with the results, especially if I can get him at a discount now. The next guy, a quarterback, Justin Herbert, got rolled up on again, re-aggravated the high ankle, and this is something to be worried about. He's not going to feel better next week compared to how he felt this week. It's not going to necessarily change his timeline. I think that if the Chargers are prudent, they sit him for 1 to 2 weeks. And I think if they're slightly reckless, they throw him out there again. He's going to be, again, at risk to re-injure that ankle and re-aggravate it. He's probably not causing any specific damage, any structural damage, but when he's out there, he's getting rolled up on. He's just picking the scab. And it's going to continue to feel terrible, probably for the next month or so, unless they let him recover and rehab. So that offense will obviously look much different if Justin Herbert isn't under center. So even if he does, as if you're in a single quarterback league, I'm not trotting Justin Herbert out there. I might even hesitate in a super flex league because he is so high risk. I would not use him in any cash games. If you're feeling frisky and he plays, you can throw him in some tournaments. But Justin Herbert still struggling with the high ankle. It's not going away. He's not going to look any better or feel any better necessarily physically in week 4 compared to week 3. Let's talk about a couple of guys together here. DeVonta Smith and Trey McBride. 2 concussions, 2 different humans, 2 different individuals, 2 different athletes, but it is both of them. For both of them, it's their first documented concussion. Both of them pretty scary hits, both of them pretty scary results. I don't want to project what we're going to see with these concussions because oftentimes you can have, in my head, I'm thinking of 2020, I want to say, DeAndre Swift. I mean, he was having headaches for a month after. You have the situation like that, or you have, Chris Godwin, the same thing happened to him. He had his first concussion and he missed a week. You have other guys that get through the concussion protocol after the first concussion and they get through in 3 or 4 days. That's Gus Edwards. Every brain is different. Every athlete's different. What I would say right now, plan on being without DeVonta Smith and Trey McBride and plan on not using them in cash games because the first week back from a concussion is the highest risk possible. They do have until both of them have until Saturday to clear, or the day before their game, they have to be able to clear concussion protocol. But understand that if they do come back, they are at an increased risk. Believe it or not, for a lower body injury, there's new data to show guys coming off concussions are at an increased risk for lower body issues. DeVonta Smith already having a hamstring history. Something to consider if you're splitting hairs, if you're talking trades. If you're looking at in the future and those guys are involved in any way, shape, or form, that can be a bit of a tiebreaker, but don't weigh that too heavily. So again, expect to be without Trey McBride and DeVonta Smith if the teams are conservative, but there is still a chance that they go. Just continue to monitor those practice reports. Last guy, Jonathon Brooks, one of our guys, right? We called out Cooper Kupp. Ended pretty poorly, ended, in that 98% of players who end up having an injury in a game, unfortunately, but we got that right. We nailed it. Puka Nacua, we were off on, right? But Jonathon Brooks is our other sort of gem that we were seeking in the preseason with Andy Dalton surprisingly making that offense look functional with Deontay Johnson and Chuba Hubbard going off. I don't expect that every week. Both Andy Dalton under center, Jonathon Brooks has legitimate upside to be a top 10, 15 running back. If he is for whatever reason out on your waiver wires, go get him now. If you can acquire Jonathan Brooks from one of your league mates who is struggling, maybe 1-2, and they have him on the bench, or they're 0-3, go offer something for Jonathan Brooks. I promise you, as long as things keep going the way that they are, you won't regret it. Again, if you want the rest of these, if you want the full recap, if you want everybody who is on the injured list, injury report, go to fantasypoints.com, check them out there. But of course, go to the injury, the link, the show notes, go to the injury prone draft guide and playbook. You can manage your own fantasy team. Stop asking your questions. Click on that link. If you regret it, I will give you your money back. I guarantee it. Injury prone draft guide and playbook. Other than that, good luck.